welcome to Unearned Confidence. My name is Ben, and I'm here with my buddy and co-host, Kyle. Each week, we get to interview one of the world's most exciting people that is somehow pushing the needle on either sustainability, electrification, or just badass humanness. Today, we have the pleasure of talking to Mr. Stefan Ytterborn. Stefan is the CEO and founder of Cake Motorcycles, which is ridecake.com, and also the former CEO and founder of POC Helmets and Protective Gear for Gravity Sports. Stefan is coming to us from Stockholm, Sweden. Welcome, Stefan. Stefan, how are you doing?
I'm all right. We're all in the same situation somehow, and you just need to spend your time differently than what you're used to. But I'm all right, thank you.
Yeah, well, this is we're all learning. I didn't anticipate 2 months ago that I would become a online video chat host. Like, that was not something that ever occurred to me. Perhaps you're the same. I don't know, but I didn't anticipate that.
I mean, somehow they're a lot of different things, but we'll see. I might end up where you are, in a few months.
Well, we're getting through it. I mean, this truthfully, it hasn't, at least in our regard here, or my regard in my house. I have 3 little boys. My wife works in a hospital. She's a physician, and she goes down and has to be a part of that whole thing. But otherwise, I mean, the kids love it. They've been loving being home. They miss their friends, but they've been loving being home, and it's not too bad. I mean, if this is as bad as it is in terms of having to socially isolate, then I think that's the least we can do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Stefan, I found you. I frequent this publication called electric.co, and they showcase primarily Teslas and electric vehicles, four-wheeled transportation. However, the guy that started it also is quite a fan of all forms of electric mobility, and they showcase motorbikes of all sorts that are electrically powered, and I pay close attention. I find them cool. Well, alas, one day there is Cake, and I thought, Cake? These bikes are called Cake. Well, I checked them out, and they're incredible. This incredible, I don't want to misinterpret this, but like a sort of a Bauhaus minimalist design with unbelievable power and lightweight. How in the hell did you invent something like that so beautiful and powerful? And can you tell us about it a little bit?
Well, there are numerous angles to that whole thing, but I'd say that starting from the reason, I've always been in businesses promoting some kind of a purpose, whether it's been my previous business, POC, doing protection and helmets for gravity sports athletes, or in this case, supporting the trying to inspire the market towards zero emission by being able to combine excitement with responsibility. A vehicle that doesn't pollute, doesn't disturb, it's totally silent, and has a number of benefits, which actually makes this kind of off-road experience an including experience rather than an excluding one. The whole motorcycling culture, which I was never a part of, and I need to be humble about that. And that's maybe why we've been able to break a few rules and pass those cannot be done kind of attitudes. Thanks to the easiness of riding, you don't need the clutch, you don't need to change gears and all that. That really got me going. And I 5 years ago, I started buying everything that was in the market without the intention of actually starting a business, but because I was so curious about what electric would mean in terms of both the fun part of it as well as the transportation aspect of things. And I had hundreds of friends trying these different bikes, and it was very interesting to get the feedback with someone who used to ride the World Championship motocross, came back to me saying that, hey,
Wow.
Stefan, it's amazing. It's more like skiing powder in the woods without the need for snow or slope. or young women for the first time, putting on helmets, boots, goggles, and idling away really slowly, super scared, and then getting back to me after 20 minutes at high speed, sliding in front of me, screaming out loud, "Hey, Stefan, this is the most amazing thing I've done in my life." And then that's when the whole thing started to grow on me, and I realized that speaking about purpose in this case could really bring, a new perspective on uh, the fun side together with the transportation side of things, and having people transition from combustion and gasoline to electric in a lubricated and kind of positive way. So there's this combination between doing good, and then I'm totally stoked about innovation and bringing performance to stuff that that actually support your ability to perform, or just your ability to live. And that has been something that has been a strong kind of point in whatever I did throughout my career.
So if you don't mind, would you be willing to just, for our listeners, kind of give an overview of the product offering itself, just get a good idea of exactly what we're referring to if they're not familiar already?
Yeah. And sorry about that. So basically what we're doing is that when I was through this experience of having tried the different motorbikes and so forth, I actually, came to a point where I could conclude a few things. And one of the important things, and that's why I think that we've been able to actually get a bit further at this point, is that without the motorcycling kind of heritage or burden, on our side, we could start looking new at, in a fresh way, without having those, musts or mustn'ts. And in this case, we concluded that to optimize the performance of, a two-wheeled electric vehicle, you need to build super light. So instead of doing what the majority of the companies out there, without bashing at them saying that that's stupid, because they're doing nice products, but if you really want to emphasize and explore the level of performance, you need to build super light, and it's totally a power weight ratio thing here. And what we did was basically understanding that there was nothing off the shelf that we could actually use. So we needed to start from scratch when I decided to get this from, inspiration and fun to actually, trying to build a business from it. And with that said, we have done, everything from hubs to rims to, extruding, piping, even the tires are specifically developed to support this super light, performance-oriented off-road bike, the Cake Calc, which is the first one we did. And then there's a second bike in the market called the Cake Ösa, which is a more utility transportation oriented something with off-road capabilities, but you're not flipping in the bike or jumping 100 feet. But it basically the approach is build as light as you possibly can, and to do that we needed to start from scratch. So in the end, there were three standard components on the bike: foot pegs, rubber handles, and brake levers. Everything else is made and designed and engineered from scratch. So
That's
the bike
impressive.
is 150 pound, something that behaves pretty much somewhere in between an MX 125, 250, somewhere in between.
Okay. So when you did this, for example, you were going in. Sounds like you were applying first principles engineering. Did you have a sense of metallurgy or this, or do you have a team of engineers that investigated what are the lightest metals, alloys, etc. And then
I would say that again. I don't have a personal experience or competence in metallurgy to the level where I would actually, be someone who would attend the metallurgy summit every year globally. But I do have a strong notion about. I've been developing products my whole life.
Yeah.
Before I've been working with consumer products throughout my whole life. I've probably brought 5,000 products to the market or something. So I have a strong
insight, experience, and feeling for material, for construction, from manufacturing methods and so forth, and then being a geeky cyclist, because a lot of things that we've done, and I would, without again bashing on the motorcycling space, but I'd say that looking at motorcycling itself, the reason why motorcycle, is constituted the way it is based on a number of different facts. The fact that it's a combustion engine, it needs gasoline and so forth, and therefore there are certain measures and angles and wheelbases and whatever. My kind of personal and subjective attitude to actually bring this super light vessel, in using an electric drivetrain, is strongly inspired from my cycling, know-how and experience.
Hey, Stefan, I'm going to interrupt just 1 second here. Your face is cutting off just there. We got you perfectly right there. If that's, I don't know if that's difficult to maintain that, but we've got you now. But we're hearing you loud and clear. So my apologies. You continue. You were mentioning you came from a road bike background.
And again, it's to a large extent to my insights to cycling and bicycles and stuff like that, because we built this much more like a contemporary downhill mountain bike than a traditional motorcycle. So that's one thing. And then of course I do have, being a startup, I mean, in the beginning we were 1, 2, 3 guys, and then we needed to wear a number of different hats. But just to mention someone, there are also consultants in this case. And when we speak about kinematics, for instance, we've been working together with a guy named David Earl, who's known for making suspension for the mountain bike, community and space and industry for years and years and years. So again, being clear about the fact that I'm not a specialist in metallurgy, but I have a very strong notion about the differences between different alloys and what they're good for and what not to use and the reasons why and so forth. So I have a common knowledge in those, in that spectrum.
Okay, let me ask you some specifics. So I noticed just visually, you can see you have a huge rear sprocket and a small front sprocket, which leads me to believe you guys are direct drive. Is that the case? Are you a direct drive type situation, or something you can speak intelligently to?
It's a deliberate kind of decision through the process of developing the product. So by deciding and knowing that with that huge rear sprocket, people will go, wow, this looks odd. But one of the important aspects with the whole electric aspect here, and speaking about maintenance and so forth, we want the bike to be as simple as possible to ride and to own. And in that sense, we could exclude 26 moving parts by doing direct drive instead of doing, a gearbox in between and all that.
Yeah.
So it was all about simplifying the vehicle as a whole. So that was one of the aspects where there was an active decision. Let's do it direct drive because it's going to be, so much easier in terms of, again, owning it and making it than everything else.
Of course. Okay. Well, I grew up sort of in a rural environment, but cycling was a huge part of my life as a child. I was like USCF certified by like age 12 or something ridiculous. Yeah. It's now been disbanded, but there's a new cycling federation now. But at any rate, it was a big deal for kids to save their pennies and build up their bikes. And, like I had originally had a Bianchi with Campagnolo equipment and things like that. And we were counting grams. And we were removing spokes when we didn't think they were necessary. We were always tweaking and trying to reduce weight. Is this process similar when you endeavor to build a bike? I mean, you've got more computer help these days, but do you go in and you constantly counting grams and to get to that 150 pounds and whatnot?
The interesting thing here is that there's no real reference, of course, without again being big-headed about the fact where we're at, then there is no competition. But I would say that competition at this point is very basic. We're going to see tons of competitors down the road. So I'm really humble about that. But the current players in the market who are into, the understanding, and there's a lot of smart guys, technical guys, really good at welding. They're in the garages around the world building hybrids of standard parts, using a downhill mountain bike fork and then, a rear wheel from an 85cc motorbike or whatever. The problem there is that those products pretty much show a direction. And I've been, honestly, they inspired me because they were the ones showing that building light is the way forward. But again, those bikes, the mountain bike stuff is too fragile. It breaks, and the motorbike parts are too heavy, and it doesn't really support the whole thing. So that said, I'd say that with us at this point ending up with a bike at 150, speaking about the off-road, pure off-road bike, at 150 pounds, it's based on how I kind of relate to what you just described with building bikes. We tried and build everything as light as we possibly could, and our reference was always, if this had been a downhill mountain bike, or in reference to an 85cc or a 125cc motorbike, and trying to find the being inspired by both those categories or those spaces, and then coming up with something as we would have had competition, even though that there hasn't been too much around. So on the other hand, I would say if there was true competition within this category of super light, performance-oriented off-road bikes, I think that we'd be even better in terms of actually motivating ourselves and gaining additional grams. But so we'll see how this develops. But yes, I have that same kind of upbringing and attitude towards optimizing performance by finding those grams. Yes.
So when you approach a product like this, I'm curious, do you get a group of engineers together, you engineer the components, and then you go to manufacturers and you use them to manufacture the component and you assemble then kind of in-house, or are you doing the manufacturing there? What's like the supply chain look like?
Yeah, it's so basically we're manufacturing everything we do in Taiwan. And the reason for being in Taiwan these days is because they're really good when it comes to quality. 40 years ago, people went to Taiwan because it was cheap, but it's not. It's actually pretty expensive these days. But Taiwan and in Taichung, where everything is based, and we're in the need for a number of different vendors and manufacturers. So someone's doing the tires, someone else is doing, hubs, someone else is doing handlebars and whatever. The beauty with Taichung is that they have the cycling and the motorcycling industry in a radius of maybe 10 miles or something. So there are hundreds and hundreds of vendors and manufacturers there. So it's a very efficient geography in terms of finding the right suppliers. But before getting there, I'd say that all of the development work is being done in Stockholm, where we have our headquarters. And again, at this point, we've grown a bit. So instead of just being 2, 3, or 4 guys, we're like, about 20 guys at the head office. So they're mechanical engineers, industrial designers, electronic engineers. And my role, leading this bunch is I'm like a conductor or a orchestrating the whole thing. So I have a very strong, I'd say that I'm doing the manuscript, and I'm casting the crew, and I'm directing the film, and I wouldn't have a chance in the world of doing that unless I had brilliant colleagues. So it's really a teamwork where we have different roles.
Well, clearly there is a strong emphasis on aesthetic design. I mean, I'm sure it's also quite functional, but this might be, and I don't mean to blow wind up your skirt, but it's probably the most beautiful electric motorbike I've ever seen, and I'm referencing particularly the Calc ampersand, or and rather Calc and. So somebody there, and it's probably you, has and others have a very strong design sensibility.
Yeah, I'd say that throughout my career, and again, I've come to the point in my life that I never speak about design as something to me, design is all about making a strategy come to life, and in that sense, we have a number of different parameters that we want to reach in terms of what we described as perceived aspiration. What's the aspiration we're looking to establish, out there? And the process of design then is to make sure that every little component that eventually contributes to the finished product is supporting that aspired perception. I put it wrongly here. I'm speaking about the inspired perception. That's what we're looking to establish. So that said, it's an ongoing, everyday kind of pursuit, which is not doesn't have anything to do with trying to give it a cosmetic kind of look in the end. It's like from the start of the process, we know exactly what we want to achieve in that sense, and then it's really important that the seat has a relationship to the radius of the cutouts in the braking disc, which is connected to how we've done the design of the triple clamps or whatever it might be. There's not a single component which is not filtered through that filter, which is basically speaking about the aspired perception in the end. Ourselves being the judges, saying that this is what we believe that will actually support that same aspired perception. So yes, it's a very and then again, I like beautiful things. So why make something ugly if you can make it look funky and nice?
Well, that's said simply, but I think very special people it takes to make something like that. The words you use there, are the description of how you get things to integrate aesthetically, reminds me of the curvature, the radius rather, of the corners on an Apple device. I believe that radius is even patented in some form. But it's very purposeful and very easy to. You may not be able to if you're not a design guru or whatnot. You might not be able to articulate exactly what that is, but you naturally feel this is right, and that's similar to how I feel when I look at your bikes. Which leads me to my next question. When can we get them here in the United States and perhaps elsewhere? Because we do have viewers from all over the place.
Yeah. So we have a sales office in Park City, Utah, and they've been delivering bike for the past, I'd say, first we did a limited edition as we showed the bike the first time at OR in 2018. And I think we sold 15 or 20 bikes. But I think that throughout the past 12 months, we probably delivered close to 100 bikes in America.
Wow.
And the actual, the real delivery starts from pretty much next month. So we now have 6 different models in the market. There are 2 Calcs, 1 OR, which is pure off-road, the Calc N, which is the street certified version of that same model. There is the ELSA, which is again that utility transportation thing, which comes as a scooter or as a moped. And then there's also a black edition of the Calc called Ink that comes as an off-road as well as a street certified bike as well. All of those are to deliver in America from 2 to 4 weeks from now.
Okay. And it seems like you guys have kept things going to some degree through this pandemic. Is that in any way influencing things?
I would say that everyone's working from home, and we were super scared about what the situation would be as naturally. And I'm not saying that we've been lucky for and again, we're a small company. We're speaking, we're doing maybe 600 or 700 bikes this year. But of course, it's been worrying with the whole situation. But we've been lucky to increase. We did, March was by far the best month through, when it comes to sales, and April seems to be even better. So there is traction in the market, even though we're unable to support what is the main kind of sales task we're implementing, which is being able to be out there, having people test ride the bikes. So we have a number of trucks around the country or in America as well as in Europe with bikes at the back of the car and promoting test riding at anything from Sea Otter to Burning Man or whatever it might be.
Very cool.
How are you guys
go ahead,
the battery pack? Where are you getting your battery cells, and how do you have that constructed?
So we started off doing the batteries in Europe in the the Czech Republic, and it's really interesting as a as an isolated aspect of things. But due to the fact that there hasn't been any gasoline vehicles in former Eastern Europe, there's a lot of competence in those countries when it comes to electric drivetrains. So they kind of missed out on the whole combustion engine thing and went right on to electric. So speaking about countries like Russia, Poland, the Czech Republic, Croatia, Slovenia, so forth, there's a lot of super competence on the electric side of things.
Okay.
That's another little, that's an isolated but interesting aspect of things. We have moved all our manufacturing, including battery, to Taiwan at this point. Mm-hmm. And the reason for doing that in Taiwan as well is basically because, as of before, all of the bikes have had to pass through Europe before going to America. And we have 50% or more of our sales in America. So in that sense, we actually have, from Taichung to LA, it's only 2.5 weeks by boat, while it took, 10 to 12 weeks to get it via Europe to America. The next step in this case is because, again, we're not faking the aspect that it's really something that drives our business, which is, being honest about what can be done and cannot be done in terms of supporting the idea of sustainability, and just bragging about the fact that we're electric, therefore we're good, is bullshit. Because mm-hmm. looking at the situation right now, an electric vehicle is pretty much just as bad as a combustion engine.
Yeah.
At this point, but things are changing, and everyone in the space knows that in 10 years from now, those things will have been solved. And like an example of that is that we're starting to use battery cells from a company named Northvolt, and those batteries are being made in the north of Sweden, and they're only using hydropower to produce those battery cells. Wow. Because honestly, at this point, the majority of the cells being sold and used in the world are being produced in South Korea, Japan, or in China, and all of those manufacturers are pretty much burning coal to make their batteries.
These are the 2170s.
We're using 1865s now. We changed it to 2170s as we move on. Change to Northvolt.
Okay.
Yep. So that said, we need to find. That's one of the aspects where it's not. You cannot take for granted that just because it's electric, it's good. It has a number of different challenges.
Are you familiar with the B Corps or Certified B? This designation. Are you at all familiar with that?
No, you need to help me here.
Yeah, no worries. It's like you're probably familiar with the company Patagonia. Founded by von Schwannard. They're one of the sort of flagship companies that has embraced this B certification, and I'm not trying to impress upon you to do this or otherwise, but it is interesting that they're a group of Wall Street types, money types that got sort of disenfranchised by being in that arena, decided to create an organization about 10 years ago that puts language in a business's bylaws that where you get basically an aggregate score. Okay, well, how many of your people, how far do your employees have to drive to get to work? Can they walk to get to work? And
yeah, I'm with you.
Okay, so I'm just curious. Like for instance, I'm going to be talking to Ben Anderson next week. He's the founder of Icelandic Skis, and he's also a neighbor.
Okay.
They're in the process. They're sort of investigating that route. Again, not holding your feet to the fire or anything like that. But would you ever consider something like that, or are you considering something like that?
We're doing a number of initiatives like that, and that is, over time being communicated on our website. Mm-hmm. So right now we're doing 1 point, life cycle analysis to get that going. But there are a number of things that we need to include because, again, without, I love Patagonia, for instance.
Of course.
I have numerous products, and I think that what they've done in terms of bringing understanding and engagement and whatnot to the market is super important. Mm-hmm. But I think that we need to be very sensitive, whoever we would be, whether we be consumers or companies. To me, when Patagonia says that they're in business to save the world, I'm like, hey guys, if that would be the pursuit, maybe you shouldn't even be producing and selling items.
Yeah.
So you need to be a bit cautious about how you deal
Agreed.
with these topics. And it's much more complex than just speaking about sustainability, because the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah.
And this is a process. It's going to take time. And it doesn't matter if you're in the vehicle business or if you're producing fleece jackets. We need to be patient about the fact that things will not change from one day to another. And we need to be 100% transparent about what we do and what the drawbacks and challenges are, and to bring everyone on board to understand that this is a collective kind of motion going forward. And we're all obligated to take our responsibility to get to the point where we actually make a difference, to get to the point where we can extend, our opportunity or abilities to actually support the needed change, which is super crucial.
Amen.
So I have a whole, there are a number of initiatives we're doing in this sense, but to me, this is one of the purpose aspects of doing what we're doing. And we need to bring people with us, and we need to tell them that before, we're doing this and this and this and that, and we're doing in this and this and that order. And you need to ask yourself, if you're going to ride or if you're going to drive an electric vehicle, where do you actually get your power from? Where do you buy your power from? And that's so simple for the customer to be able to find out somewhere where they can rely on that the stuff they're getting, the juice they're using to drive whatever it might be, has decent levels of impact in terms of, or in relation or versus other stuff. And I'm not going to bore you with details, but we have a number of initiatives, like, we're printing the quality of the alloy we're using on every little component, for instance, because when you're recycling aluminium, you need to make sure that you actually melt the same quality of alloy with, in the same bucket as that same quality. And that's how to preserve and maintain both quality and pricing of the aluminium, because otherwise it all ends up in Coca-Cola cans. So
exactly.
Again, this is something which is really something that we love. I'd say I love speaking about, because influencing people and opening people's eyes, at the same time not trying to fool people that this is actually something which,
a silver bullet that saves the earth just by producing electric motorcycles, right?
No, right. It's like we're on a journey here.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, this right here, this was worth the conversation, just to hear this bit from you. A lot of people a lot of businesses signal to the rest of us that they're, they'll use words like sustainability, which is, very nebulous word to begin with, but and it's really, they're just casting a net to get more people to consume, and so on and so forth. But to hear you say that, to be honest, and is really good. And the way I would view a business like yours, and perhaps your previous businesses, is that, to me, when you make something like that is an EV that's beautiful and capable, it's the starting point. You have now attracted people to get the conversation going, if they haven't already had that conversation themselves. So what you're doing is great. To hear you explain how your methodology works is fantastic, and man, we wish you the best of success. Yeah. But we don't have to do that. You're already gonna be successful.
We'll see.
Yeah. Well, Kyle, you have anything else? If not, I'll wrap it up here. But
no, that was great. Thank you for filling us in on what you're doing. It was very interesting.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, Stefan, thank you very much. Well, that does it, folks. That wraps up our show. Thank you so much to Mr. Stefan Ytterborn and his company, ridecake.com. You can find us at theucsshow.com ourselves, where you can find our links to our podcast as well as our YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe. As always, if you have any comments, please, good or bad, put them down at the bottom. We'd love to hear them. We need feedback to improve this show. Thanks again. We'll talk to you all next week.